Thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our March Borough Board. We have a pretty light agenda. I think we're just waiting on one presenter that I want to give a note on. So I guess I'll just say it now rather than get to it later. Oh, thank you. So we're gonna have a presentation for a public hearing and vote on the disposition for Spark Kips Bay. That is a vote that is only for CB6, the council member's office, and the borough president. So just in case anybody was wondering if they had to weigh in on it, it's only those three because that is the site. That being said, I'm happy to bring our meeting to order. We'll start with the adoption of today's meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Also move forward with the adoption of the borough board minutes.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Great. I have a very brief borough president's report. First of all, thank you to everyone who's been getting the word out for the entire process for community boards. I told a few folks here, we had an incredible showing with community board applications where we had over 100 than we did last year. So we're at 940 applicants for 300 spots. So, we're going to take our time, really go through this process. Thanks to some of you who actually had to interview this year too. Always good to see your faces on Zoom for these meetings. We just wrapped up our final interview session yesterday. So really excited that that process is over and now we can just kind of bury our heads in applications for the next month or so, have conversations with the council members, with the borough president, of course, and really start to figure out which folks make the best sense for your boards. For those of you who did do the interview session, you probably heard us hammer at every instance the idea that this is a voluntary position that does have a mandatory requirement in terms of how many hours you're putting in between at least 2 committees and a full board. So folks know that this is required of them, otherwise we would remove them. So we're going to continue that conversation even when we get to the point where we talk to folks about getting the final placement. We'll say like, and can you commit to that time? So we will continue to hammer that down because we know that quorum is incredibly important. Yeah.
Would you be so kind as to make sure that the council members, because on CB11 we have a lot of the council member appointments that resigned as a result, that they expressed that in tandem with the MVPO's office.
Yeah, so when we had our conversations, we did flag those that hadn't reapplied. That was another note I was going to make.
Wonderful.
Valerie, I know that you flagged Adam as an example. He and I have already spoken, so there may be folks that just didn't notice the email. They just tried to sign up the other day. They didn't see any more slots. That's fine. We have a makeup assignment in lieu of the interview for folks who just aren't able to do the interview session. So if you have anybody that comes to you and says, I didn't realize I was up, I didn't see the link, whatever it is, just please forward them to me and I'm happy to connect them with the assignment so that they can still get credit. Just a couple of quick things. The borough president's State of the Borough address is coming up this Sunday. So hopefully if you're able to attend, we'd love to have you there. Also, please share within your networks. The borough president's, the State of the Borough address is going to be at LaGuardia High School, 100 Amsterdam Avenue, starting at 2 p.m. There'll be some refreshments up after, so please join us. The BP had a couple of op-eds that I just wanted to flag. One is about Woolman Rink and the ask that he penned a letter with Councilmember Krishnan, who is the chair of the Parks Committee, asking that the contract not be awarded to the Trump organization for control of Woolman Rink, just because our parks are supposed to be open and inclusive places and the Trump brand does not really reflect that. The ask is hopefully that Central Park Conservancy, who obviously has a long understanding of the park, would be person there. And then also just bumping up again our Breaking the Cycle, our mental health plan that we had issued a little while ago. Borough President has really been sounding the alarm yet again about just the mental health services drain that we have seen over the last few years. There are thousands of beds either at the state or city level that we have lost for inpatient psychiatric treatment. So there is an incredible service as an example for transition to home. It's like wraparound service. And the hope is that we can increase those numbers to get folks the services that they truly need in order to transition better into services, treatment, and like being able to live out their lives in a comfortable way. That's all that I have for the Borough President's report. Are there any questions? Just perfect.
All right.
So if you wanna pause or should we?
You can go ahead with your agenda until he gets here.
Okay, thank you. So I think while we wait for one more voting member for the public hearing and presentation, we're happy to jump into chair reports. I don't think that we have anybody from CB3. Since it's March, we would usually go there. Jessica, I know you just walked
No
in,
problem.
but if you need a minute, otherwise you're
I was-
welcome to.
I was joining you on the YouTube,
saw
so I feel like I was with you guys. Sorry to be late. Jessica Chait, Chair of Manhattan Community Board 4. You know, far and away, our most challenging and biggest issue is the Fulton Elliott NYCHA campus redesign. I saw one of my colleagues from NYCHA on the subway this morning, so that explains in part the delay. But this is the proposed demolition of all of the 2 campuses and rebuilding by Related, and the environmental is going to be released. Our comments to the draft EIS will be released hopefully by the end of this month, so we're creeping towards that. And this has just been, I mean, it's a massive project. It's both in the number of people it will impact. The proposed budget is $1.9 billion. It will take upwards of 15 years. Obviously, the 2,000 people who call these units home and ensuring the protections for them. And really both the residents and the community appear to be quite split on the proposed project. And so whereas previously we were able to say that all residents were in favor because there were tenants associations representing them were in favor, that dynamic has shifted recently. And all to say that this is, it's again, it's a tremendous, it has the potential for such tremendous impact. Actually, it has potential either way, whether it's demolition or renovation, which is really not on the table, or should the project not go forward at all, would be a significant, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just in the world of possibilities, especially that they have to get approval from the federal government. And while we believe the federal government is likely to be friendly to the applicant, you know, you just never know in this current environment. And it's actually led to like incredibly contentious. This has been a very divisive issue. It's been a prolonged issue, meaning we've been talking about this since a working group began in 2019 on this topic. And there's just mounting frustration, both with the nature of the discussion, also the challenges working with, frankly, NYCHA on the project and getting the information we need to be able to advise appropriately. Ultimately, the board is going to be asked to, you know, look, it will go for ULURP. And so that really is like actually our role. And like literally every meeting we have and have had for months has been dominated by this conversation or a text of this conversation. And so, you know, we have other issues, of course. We have the Midtown South rezoning, you know, many other things. But I would say far and away, this issue colors absolutely everything we do and takes up not just the plurality of my time, but really like everybody's time. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about the project. But you will continue to hear about it, both in the news, I'm sure, and, you know, just around it. It is of tremendous significance. Yeah.
Can you ask what the largest divide that needs to be sort of bridged is?
It really comes down to the fundamentally demolition versus not demolition. Many people, there are other elements, including many people don't believe in the PACT program, don't want to see private developers have a role in public housing. That also contains the evolution and the change between section 8 to section 9. But truly, I think, even at its more fundamental core, is the idea of demolishing public housing and the just tremendous concern about just what does that say about our city's commitment to public housing? And then also what protections are in place should, for whatever reason, the project not be rebuilt, and what happens to the 2,000 families. The AG is looking very closely with this, we've tried to bring in all of, as many experts and the potential to have as much coverage, both for the tenants. I go to the tenant association meetings now, and it's been very interesting also to see the role the board does play in this. Sorry to kind of move on from the response to your question, but I struggle because people who come to the board want the board to have the board take some additional action. But I go to the tenant meetings and many people are just heads down in support of the project and living their busy lives and believe that, and some people will say, like, where's my new home? I've already been waiting 2.5 years. And so making sure that the board and our board members stay tethered to the experience of the tenants is really hard, particularly when you have tenant leadership in different camps now. Maybe that was always difficult, but especially now that the representation is split. But at its core, the issue of demo, and then we have not just the residents, but also neighbors, community stakeholders who don't want to live, in a construction project for 15 years. And it's right up against our landmarks area. It's a very high value neighborhood. So all of these issues get brought in and
With the RAD pack, we've been dealing with that. And I think most of you know, we have one of the highest concentrations in NYCHA, definitely in Manhattan and arguably within the city. We found that there was oftentimes a misrepresentation from NYCHA when it came to the implementation of the program. We went into the Bronx to see how it had been executed. I think most people are frustrated, and obviously we've kind of delved deeply, and Brian Honen's been very helpful, but when it comes to drawing it out in crayon, they took on a whole host of tenement housing during the 70s and 80s that actually added to the portfolio and caused a deep degree of debt that couldn't be structured. And then we had the disinvestment from the federal government. So it's kind of, what do you do? But I think when it comes to the representation of the tenant interest, our camps have definitely been against RADPAC, and they're still pushing it forward and bypassing the TAs by just getting a vote from the collective whole. And that's what we found as a challenge in CV11. So just as a comment to let everyone know as this comes down the pipe for everyone. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's really, it is, again, it is a big and challenging and personal issue for so many, literally where they lay their heads down, where they raise their families, etc. And so therefore there's a lot of concern, and I would even say fear. But also, a lot of distrust with NYCHA because of the current conditions, and then a lack of information and appropriate handholding through this process to say this is what this really can look like, and like really offering full transparency, not just for the residents, but for the community. Because they've just, to quote, I won't name who, but to quote one of our electeds, this has been this has been an effed process, and let's try to un-eff it. And I don't know that we can at this point. To be honest, it's so brutally divisive, and I'm not entirely sure what alternatives we have. To be honest, like NYCHA does not have the money without a private developer, without PACT, and there's not a lot of political will to think about this in some other way or resources. And the mayor has put his support behind this, our electeds have put their support behind it, including the congressman. So, I think our role is really just to try to ensure the best for the residents and for the community. And but it's brutal.
Thank you.
Is there any guarantee that the city, if the developer went under, because I have a couple projects in Lower Manhattan where the developer is in financial distress, therefore the housing that was promised is not happening.
So
which
that's
we've
really the
seen.
goal of the AG here, like to really make sure that those requirements are, you know, totally watertight and can be assured. And I'm grateful that she has put such a team on it. I hope that they'll bring in the finance expertise that they need, not just the legal expertise, because so much of this is about ensuring financial protections for these projects. But that is, I mean, ultimately, we need to be sure, and we really, you know, want to ensure that there's no displacement. The developer promises that there won't be, but you know, whatever we can do to keep these communities, our community intact.
Thank you. I see Valerie has her hand up and then we're gonna.
Yeah, a quick question. What are they projecting as the cost of the project? I was just curious about
Currently
that.
projected at $1.9 billion, which includes not just the construction, the demolition and construction, but also all of the costs associated with supporting tenants right now. We've really advocated for immediate renovation of the units for people who are going to have to wait many years. The developers paying for that, as well as just tenant support to navigate, you know, their own issues as it relates to moving, et cetera. So it's both hard and soft costs for the totality of the project. But it is the most expensive, as you can imagine. It's also going to be more expensive with tariffs, et cetera, et cetera.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Tristan, I will pass it to you on behalf of CP5.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Tristan Haas, Vice Chair of Board 5, stepping in for Brad this week. First time here, so very excited to meet you all. Thank you. We have a busy month ahead of us. The most probably important or key issue that we're facing is the Midtown South rezoning project. And so we had a public session yesterday where members of the public came in to share their thoughts on the initial proposal. Our land use committee and other members of the board have been doing a lot of diligence of the proposal itself, including engaging with external consultants to help them help us assess the proposal. And then we'll have meetings later this month with our land use committee, as well as certain of our other committees are going to have some sessions to develop some ideas and proposals for the land use committee's consideration before going to full board later this month. So housing, it's, you know, I'm sure with a lot of you guys, it's been a very important issue and also like a controversial issue at times. So last year, City of Yes brought out a lot of thoughts and competing ideas, and we were able to coalesce behind, you know, one resolution that got, I think, everyone except one individual's vote in favor. And so we're hoping this year to be able to take a united stance again for this very key issue before us. We also are very eager for the appointment of the new members that are coming down. We had a lot of turnover since last year when a lot of very long tenured members left the board. So I think right now we're in like the mid to low 30s. And so we're eager for an infusion of energy and especially of folks who will be there in person because we have had some attendance issues. And so we're working on putting in place a more comprehensive and robust onboarding package for all of our full board members, as well as committee level orientation materials. And then we're also taking a look at our cannabis store review guidelines that we, you know, put in place a few years ago, but haven't exactly been, you know, fit for purpose given how they've been approached and reviewed and approved by the relevant agencies this year. So we're taking a refreshed look at that.
Just a comment, we're also looking at onboarding materials for new board members. We recently convened a board engagement working group to look at how we both engage current members, because a lot of our new members actually want more from the board in terms of socialization and activity. But one of the things that's come up in that process is just like how they get oriented to the board and how like glossary of terms and bios, all those things. A lot of that will be unique to CB4, but a lot of it won't. And maybe we could, if other people have materials that they like, maybe we could share them and just give people a jump start on what that looks like. And if that, it sounds like that's what you guys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like we got that same feedback from our members, both like new members who joined last year and existing members when we were carrying out like a bylaws revision process that did like a front to back review. And that kind of had us formalize a responsibility of the vice chairs to like manage and oversee this program. And so that's why we're kind of going in and like increasing the robustness of our stuff. So happy to share the stuff we put together and also take a look at any materials that you all have.
Well, we bring all our new people in for sort of a welcoming session where we have a slide presentation that gives you a whole rundown of our committees, our focus in terms of our responsibilities. And not only does it help them, but it makes them feel welcome and it makes them, engages them from the outset, because we found that in the past, if you don't sort of reach out and actively engage, people sort of sit back and it takes a lot longer to sort of bring them up to speed.
Yeah, we do that as well. They're just still clamoring for even more.
We have a pretty comprehensive deck that they do an onboarding. Typically, we have one virtual or in person. And Angel's there and we go over everything. And then we have a separate in-person in the district where we'll meet at a restaurant and talk about an area where we can see short, mid, and long-term the impact of the community board. So they see the real world impact. So it's something we do.
Great.
We also assign mentors.
Yeah.
So for the longer, we do in-person session for onboarding. Before the full board, we introduce everybody to the full board, but we do assign everybody a mentor. And the biggest change, I would say, from when I joined the board to what I tell people is when I joined the board, I was told, be quiet, learn, listen. And I tell everybody who joins the board, please don't be quiet. If you don't know, ask. And that I think is a really important thing because one-on-one, you can share knowledge, but if you're in a room like this, for example, asking the question gets the knowledge of everybody around the table versus just the mentor. So I think that those two things are super important. Whether you like the answers or not doesn't make a difference. It's about listening to what it trains new board members in the process of listening to alternate opinions.
Absolutely. Great.
One thing we're going to do this year is have members who've been on the board for a year, we're going to have another meeting to sort of get feedback as to is it what you thought, is the committee working out? So just a kind of way to follow.
That's great.
Sandy, I'll actually pass it to you.
Okay, we're doing a survey of housing conditions in our district, and this is partly because as part of the Spark agreement, there's going to be a city planning survey of available housing sites, et cetera. We spoke with CB4's housing committee. They were fantastic. They won't do the survey for us, though. So we're looking for advice from other boards to understand what resources maybe were used, how your committees found the information, what they did with it, and how the studies were actually used to help the board. I think that would be really helpful for us if maybe if it's okay to just approach your housing committee or if there's someone you could that we speak to. Other things, we're continuing to look at our budget request process because it's a bit loose and we're trying to firm that up. We got some very good budget responses this year. Some of the things we asked for actually happened, which is and Mount Sinai Beth Israel, it's closing. There's been lots of pushback. So one of the things, I know there was a lot of interest in CB8's ULERP to have their hospital come down to our district, looking to try and have a micro hospital at least to replace Mount Sinai, and also what to do with that property. It's a very valuable piece of property. It's adjacent to a park. It's a great neighborhood. So whatever we can do to try and get community to use. So that's and we're looking at some very positive changes in our water. So that's good and not a good.
Exciting. Great. Thanks so much. Before we continue with reports, I think what we're going to do now, as I mentioned, we do have a presentation, hearing, and then vote on this project. For those joined a little bit later, the vote is only for CB6, Councilmember Power's office and our office. But I think we'll do that now and we'll leave the vote open for when they arrive. So Gigi, I'll pass it to you. I have it open for you.
Excellent. That's the clicker. Good morning. My name's Gigi Lee. I'm a vice president at the New York City Economic Development Corporation. It's always nice to be back at Borough Board. I sat where you sat not too long ago. And so just on a personal note, thank you for your service. So today I'm giving a quick presentation and hopefully getting an approval for a 384B4 CUNY disposition on a project that the city and state are tremendously proud of, and we believe is transformational, not only for Manhattan, but for the city at large. And so I will. Okay, great. So Spark Kips Bay, which is located in CB6, is roughly a 4-acre block between 25th and 26th Streets between First Avenue and the FDR. It will be a first of its kind hub. Spark stands for Science Park. Oh my gosh, Science Park. Research campus. And it will combine education, workforce, and the life science industry all in one block. Here you see really the key partners here, as there will be a high school educational facility with New York City Public Schools. CUNY will be consolidating 2-year, 4-year grad programs all in this one future location. Private life sciences, H&H Bellevue will get a new outpatient care and training center. The forensic pathology, there will be a new forensic pathology center for the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, which does, in this process, I've learned that it does many more things than what we traditionally think about. But they also do a lot of research and also a lot of cutting edge toxicology and pathology work. And then also we're really excited that there will be over 1.5 acres of brand new public realm space as well. So. We have received approval from City Council. We finished the ULURP process about a little over a month ago. You'll see the 3 buildings. The building that the site that we are talking about right now, just to orient you, is the building that has CUNY above it. It's the furthest east, and so that side is the FDR, and that side is First Avenue. The site currently is home to CUNY educational campuses as well as the Brookdale dorms. And this is sort of what illustrative of what you will see in the future. Okay.
All right.
Great. So what do we need approval for today? There will be 2 simultaneous transactions. One, right now it is a city-owned parcel. It will be disposed to the EDC, but our LDC, right? And then at the same time, the city will assign a 99-year lease to CUNY for the purposes of the educational building, for the 99-year ground lease for $1 a year. There will be no taxes or pilot included, as so long as the site is maintained for the educational use. So it's a pretty straightforward transaction that we require approval for to move this project forward. I think that's the one. Yep.
So there's the action.
There's the action. And that's a very high level. Sandy's like, we've only been working on this for, years, but yeah.
Thanks. I see a hands up. I think this is the portion where we'll open it up for public hearing or questions. Valerie, do you have a question on this?
Yeah, I actually do. I see that you have like 1 million square feet for life sciences. There was a very controversial project in my district where RAB was overridden for the New York Blood Center to develop life science space. That was back in 2020. And that space still hasn't even been, well, it's a joke actually. But anyway, I'm just curious about what the designation for this space is and how it's going to be treated vis-a-vis taxes, et cetera, given the state of commercial real estate in this city right now. And when this project will come online, and if you actually have already tenants slotted for those, for the million square feet or whatever it is.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we don't anticipate the space coming online till 2030. We currently do not have tenants for the space. You know, both the city and EDC are extremely committed to the growth of life sciences. We've seen tremendous growth and continued growth in just all aspects of life sciences, whether we're talking about research, medicine, and it is a priority that we have not only in Manhattan, but also throughout the city. We are anticipating thinking through in the future, releasing an RFP that may contain probably like an anchor tenant, which may be an educational anchor tenant, and then additional research and private facilities. It's not something that we know at this point, but we feel confident that the life sciences industry will continue to, move in a positive direction.
So is that carved out from your tax-free piece of this project, or?
No, this is the tax-free piece is only for this parcel for CUNY.
Ah, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. Just one more ask, if there's anybody who is an attendee that wanted to give public comment. Otherwise, I will move to a vote.
Sorry, just
Yeah.
one question for the, maybe you said this, for the CUNY component, is it a consolidation for CUNY? Like they're moving from other programs into this space, and what will happen to those spaces?
Yeah, so this would be a space that they're moving programs from BMCC, from Hunter, and then also from some uptown campuses to consolidate all of their public health and nursing into this one building, right? So it's really a larger sort of educational approach here, is that you're going to start from high school and be able to start high school, 2-year programs, 4-year programs, grad school. And it's really the idea of having a pipeline in one place, intermingling, and then in addition to all of that, really being able to leverage the private sector internship programs and partnerships to all be, cohesive in that approach. And then I think, CUNY, I think, is always in need of new space and new facilities. And so, I can't answer that on behalf of CUNY, but I'm sure that they will undertake their own sort of planning process on how they'll use the space that they're vacating at their other properties.
Okay. I think, sorry, Tammy, and then we'll go to a vote.
So this is the first time that we're hearing that any part of DMCC is moving out of our district. We've heard not a peep about that. How much space is, and how many staff and how many students would CB1 be losing, and what are the plans? Are they expanding other departments, or is it just a net loss?
I can't answer that on behalf of CUNY, but I'm happy to pass that along to CUNY. This is also, 5, 6, 7 years down the road. But I'm happy to have CUNY follow up with you.
And I'd love EDC to reaffirm that that there is not a larger plan to remove the MCC from Lower Manhattan.
No, this is just their 2-year program, health program.
Okay.
Thanks, thank you. See, we're joined by Councilmember Powers. Anything you want to say before your vote?
No, first of all, I want to thank CB6, who are great and fantastic partners in this project. We're basically taking a building that has been there for a very long time, that was clearly in need of a update and upgrade, dilapidated old science buildings and dorms, and 5 blocks from my house, and also being able to really enliven, I think, the streetscape of that stretch on First Avenue, which does feel somewhat missing some activity at times. And so, years ago, there were various different plans here. I think this one is the one that makes a whole lot of sense, brings jobs, new high school, new STEAM center. So high schools probably from your areas are going to be able to feed into this life sciences program. So it's not just for Kips Bay, and create some new open space and new waterfront activity around here as well. So we a lot of good community benefits, but honestly, I think this is a bigger ticket item for the Borough of Manhattan and the city to get a new high school, to get a new feeder for our existing high schools, to get life sciences upgrades, and to frankly bring jobs that are forward-facing jobs to this area. And while also, I think, lifting up just the aesthetic of the whole area and making better use of a property here. So this is a long process. I want to thank our community board partners. And we had a whole task force of neighborhood leaders that were part of this, and really important to have that piece of it so that we can get to a plan where we can see a lot of the different needs before we vote on it and pass it. And happy that we passed a large chunk of this at the council just a few weeks ago, I think unanimously. And we want to get this done. So appreciate everyone's support.
So your vote is a yes then.
We will take that as a yes. Take my vote down, yeah.
Sandy, I will pass it to you.
Again, part of this is we're going to get a new bridge to the waterfront and also support Solar One, which is a big community asset. So we are in favor.
Thank you. And as the borough president's proxy, I also vote in favor. So thank you all for that. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Gigi, for being here. We can go back to our chair reports now. Doug, I know that you're here on behalf of Beverly. Would you like to give a report?
Yeah, sure. Doug Kleiman, Vice Chair of CB7. Sorry, Beverly couldn't be here today. And I'm sorry that I'm not there in person. I am in favor of in-person meetings, and I love to mingle with you guys. I know some of you, and I'd love to meet everyone. So yes, we had a busy month, and we have some interesting things moving forward. One of the things that I'm proud of, I was personally involved with, was we co-hosted a training session with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and all of the 3 bids within CB7, our Lincoln Square bid, our Columbus Avenue bid, and the Amsterdam Columbus bid, as it relates to trespass notice training. And this is really a tool, and it's only a tool, it's not an end-all be-all, that helps retailers trespass an individual, particularly recidivists. We're not talking about people that stole a banana. We're talking about people that are repeatedly stealing from stores 15, 20 times. We've heard the statistics that there are about 300 individuals in New York that are responsible for about 20% of the retail theft. So anyway, it was a great discussion on a law that's been on the books for 25 plus years and just a tool that can be used. So I know, I believe this training was conducted in another community board, I guess on the Upper East Side with the Madison Avenue bid. And it was very successful. It's ongoing. And I think it really provided some tools and information on how to do it correctly, responsibly, respectfully, and legally. We also had we've had some robust discussion on various proposals around discovery law, the discovery reform laws. And there's a couple of bills in the state, one with Michael Lasher and the other with Senator Myrie, as it relates to streamlining the process. It's a very narrow sliver of some of the proposals as it relates to discovery, but basically this particular bill, which we did support at the steering committee level, we expected to pass at full board, has to do with access from the DA's office directly into the NYPD servers for limited read-only stuff, so that the discovery information can be available. There's a more comprehensive, proposals that are being proposed by the DA's office in the governor's discussion, in the governor's budget hearings. We did have a really great presentation from the DA's office It was really a respectful, intelligent conversation, a little bit controversial. We did not, we were going to look to pass a resolution. We didn't. We're going to continue the conversation next month and emphasize a hearing from the defense side because we want to have a very well-rounded approach before we take any action on supporting or not supporting or abstaining. We just last night had a very this is an ongoing issue. The ABC site on the Upper West Side, as some of you know, was flipped from Larry Silverstein to Gary Barnett Extel. And I know, Tammy, you have experience with dealing with Mr. Barnett in your district. And so this is a major, major project that involves the possibility of a super tall, as much as 1,600 feet in our neighborhood. We have a long history of discussion. So we actually went into an executive session to kind of update where we stand in the process and what we can do, and quite frankly, tools to negotiate a successful outcome. The highest priority we have is affordable housing, preference on site. But, you know, there was some discussion and characterization of, do we trade in height for more affordability? And the consensus around the table was yes, because we want more affordable housing. The as of right on this project would amount to zero affordable housing. So if we get 100 more versus zero, that's a win, but that's very much ongoing. We had, as it relates to transportation, we had a really fun and exciting and informative ride along with Demetrius, I'm sorry, I forgot how to pronounce his last name. He's the head of the MTA surface. Critchlow, is that? Am I pronouncing his name correctly? Great guy. Just a wonderful thing. We took a ride on our the 104 bus with about 25 people from the community board, some elected officials in the state level, and we really in real time on the bus discussed the challenges and questions that we hear, that we have every day as commuters, as riders, and I really felt Demetrius was really earnestly taking notes on everything that we were talking about, answering questions, and those questions that he couldn't answer, he's been getting back to us. That was a lot of fun, and we're going to do it again, maybe on another bus line. And then, you know, finally, I'll just say that, well, two things. One is that we've taken it upon ourselves at CB7 to do some very comprehensive surveys of our members to understand all of the concerns, criticisms, et cetera, and how we can make our board better. And we've aggregated all of that data, and now we're acting on it. And part of that is very much the leadership training that the borough president has offered, particularly Jeremy Block's training about you know, developing leadership and passing on the institutional knowledge. We have a lot of members on CB7 which will be term limited and will be losing. So we want to make sure that all of the institutional knowledge is retained, and we really have best practices. We're really excited. We've had for years a print manual, but we're really looking to bring that on to digital, and we're excited to have links to YouTube archives on the borough president's trainings, our meetings, so that they're easily searchable, so that we don't lose any of the rich history and knowledge of all of our board members and all of our resolutions, which are ultimately what speaks for a board. And last but not least here, we're all concerned very much on what's happening with the federal administration. So I would say we're kind of in a defensive posture, and we're looking carefully at what we can do with all of our partners on the city, state, and federal level to protect everything from community-based organizations to funding. And we've been looking at every single committee and how we can really be defensive and protect many of the cuts that we expect happening, and some really, really terrible, unfair things. And I promise this is the last note. We did pass a resolution at steering, which I expect to pass at the full board, which has to do with the priorities of the controller and the chief investment officer to kind of counteract the attacks on DEI and to emphasize funding to organizations that support equity. We didn't call it DEI, but we know what we're talking about. So we're hoping that our voices that the power of the purse that the controller has will be used to maintain equity and inclusion in our city. And I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. I will pass it to Valerie.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Doug, CB8 also has a lot of experience with Gary Barnett. So actually negotiated with Gary his first building in New York City, which was right next to my building. I still remember it very well, even though it was over 20 years ago. So happy to be a resource. Good morning, everyone. Sorry I'm not in the room. Just a couple of things, just an overall, just a notice. I don't know if in your neighborhood it's been papered with signs from Blaze Cannabis that markets itself as a legal weed seller that quote unquote collects sales tax. When we started seeing those, we called our electeds right away. They are not a legal weed seller. So DSNY has been taking down their signs in our neighborhood, and we're hoping that they're going to be issuing fines for that. In addition, we understand that they are in fact under investigation for illegally selling weed across, via the internet. So I just alert you to that. We had a very positive result from the Department of Transportation after we were sort of a little bit blindsided by the almost issuance of I'll call it a closed street permit for Birchwood and Lenox on East 77th Street, which is a main artery to Lenox Hill Hospital. We had a huge response from the public. And thanks to letters that we sent based on, community input and our electeds, the DOT has decided that they will not be closing that street to traffic for Birchwood and Lenox. So things do happen. Our long-awaited 2011 York Avenue traffic study started with a kickoff meeting. Yes, I did say 2011. I don't even know what York Avenue looked like in 2011 now, but that's finally underway, and we're hopeful that that will get concluded in the next 18 months. We had 25 in-road dining applications last night. I know for a lot of you, that's just a drop in the bucket, but that was the largest number that we had. And I will say it was very controversial, and we denied some, we're in favor of others. And basically some people had theories that if it was more than 25 seats, it was a no. So it was kind of all over the map, and we're interested to see how this is all playing out all over the borough. We just opened up our call for artists. So if you know anybody who's an artist that would like to participate in our spring art display, art exhibit and vending show, that's on May 31st, please contact our board office. We're more than happy to entertain applications again from all over. The mainstay of our existence has been the hearings that we've been having on Lenox Hill Hospital, which finally officially entered the Euler process the second week of March. We had a public hearing that I will say went extremely well. We heard from every member of the public that signed up to speak, and we heard in record time. We actually were able to end early. I will say at this point, there's absolutely no meeting of the minds here. Nothing really has changed in the Lenox Hill proposals. It's still, I'm saying that vis-a-vis the community, it's still a building that will almost be 400 feet high in an area that has a limit of 175 feet. They are only adding 25 new beds to the building. The mass is substantial. But really the community, we are a very, I've said this before in front of all of you, we are a very blessed district in terms of the number of hospitals we have. And we we are wondering why this hospital can't be somewhere else. And we heard from some people who came up from downtown to say that. I don't know where this is going to come out. I think most of us are really viewing this as a pure zoning issue right now. We're hoping, we know that our electeds are engaged in discussions trying to meet. I mean, this is a really difficult question. Obviously, we want all of our hospitals to be top notch, modernized as best they can. And and Lenox Hill has been a member of our community for forever. So the second part of our hearing will be in April. We broke it up into the public piece in March. And then in the second piece will really be the executive session with the community board asking questions of the hospital, and then hopefully coming to some conclusion on a resolution, and then submitting that to the borough president. So if you're still interested, please tune in. It's a really difficult issue for us. And so that's my report.
Thank you, Valerie.
Can I say something? Valerie, I want to give you kudos. I heard that the meeting was one of the most well-run community board meeting, not no offense anybody, but very well-run community board meeting, despite how much volume there was. I was told you ran in a really efficient.
Well, thank you.
Got done early despite how many people, so want to give you a lot of kudos for that.
I appreciate that. A lot of people tuned in at 8:45 and the meeting was over. I mean, so that'll teach them. No, but it was I have to say, Keith has been doing a yeoman's effort trying to bring the parties together to, basically address both sides. And there are actually more than two sides, but it's been a very complex issue. This project has been on the table for 5 years in many iterations. So stay tuned for April, because it's kind of like must-see TV. I really don't know where this is going to come out, and we'll see. It moves on in the process, so it's been very interesting. Thank you again, Keith. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Valerie. I'll pass it over to Vic.
Yes, good morning all. Committee Board 9 report is as follows. We had a discussion on the State Senate Bill S455A, reduction of in-person quorum. Very robust discussion, I must say. I've seen stuff online regarding that. We've had problems getting people there. I know the bill talks about lowering it to possibly 25%, but we were kind of maybe in the 35 to 40% for committees, which people, kind of agreed upon. So that was, like I said, a very robust discussion. Also, Executive Board this past Thursday passed a resolution regarding the Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia University, asking that Columbia be more transparent with the goings-ons of the arrest that happened, him and other people, and also trying to advocate for electeds to speak up more about what's going on in Columbia, and just to protect freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. Those protests have been going on for a while with some issues. So some of our electeds have been very quiet on this, and others have spoken up. So we're just trying to get everyone to speak up to make sure Columbia has a voice. And as you know, Columbia is going to quite a bit at the moment. I meet with them pretty regularly. We were meeting for some time about the gates being closed at 116. And I understand the issue there. What we found there is many residents that live on the Amsterdam side. We have seniors and people who are disabled. It's a 4-block radius to go back around and get to the subway. They had issued some QR codes, and that did work for a while. It kind of cut back on that, so we're still kind of between with making that happen. The other thing with Columbia, on the Upper West Side, they have a lot of the buildings are theirs, real estate wise. Whereas the new buildings going up, that some be permitted to have non-affiliate residents move in, and they've granted some. We're looking at finalizing that. Some of the buildings that they own, they will be letting non-affiliates move into buildings. So we're hoping going forward, that would be more of that. They just put up a 30-something story building on 125th. And we were asking for space there, even if it's just seniors. As they take over the 17 acres and move people out, get more back. So negotiations with that have been good so far. So I'm hoping that goes forward much better. Also, I attended a luncheon at Harlem Hospital, legislative luncheon, where they are being impacted by budget cuts, and going forward, they think it's going to be even worse. So they're just asking us to help advocate for them, which we are doing. They are, a lot of people see Harlem as a critical care hospital, but they're really, bless you, a community hospital. And they've upped a lot of the things they do there, and serving the community. Sometimes it's the only place that people have. So we're just trying to make sure that they stay robust in that manner. Also, we have a building that is a multi-healthcare building at the moment. They're trying to, through health and hospitals, turn into supportive housing. And we're not against supportive housing. It's not a NIMBY thing. People keep saying that. I said, not everything in our backyard. So 1 block away, we have a drug treatment center. Half a block away, there's another supportive housing. And 2 others not nearby, and a shelter's going on. So we're just saying, look at the oversaturation that's going on and take that in consideration. And we're losing some critical healthcare in that building. So we've been working with some of the electeds to trying to push back on this a little bit to make sure that we can maintain some of these services. This building gives out hundreds of meals each week. I see people lined up there all the time to get free meals and groceries. So it's a vital building for the community. So we're hoping that can go forward. Probably, let's see, one other item. No. This past Tuesday, I had the pleasure of doing a walkthrough of our park, 10 Mile Rail Park in the Hudson with Tricia. And just pointing out some things that were lacking. I've been asking for picnic tables for the last 5 years. We've gotten 5 years. So we're looking at, and as I said, some of it's a capital project. So I was like, well, when is that coming? And what we did was we went up to board 12 and showed what was there. We went down to 7 and showed the difference between the 2. And we've gotten some things out with just the dialogue to start that happening, because a lot of people do utilize the park, and we're just hoping for more amenities for people there. So it was a great meeting and good seeing Tricia as always. So that's kind of a report to this month.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I will pass it to Dawn.
Morning, everyone. My name is Dawn Richards, and I am the Assistant Secretary for Community 10. I'm covering for Marquise. He regrets that he's not able to come due to work schedule conflict. So first, I want to acknowledge Women's History Month. We also want to take a few minutes to acknowledge and honor the legacy of Dr. Hazel Dukes. On the first day of this month, we lost a legend. She served on our board for 2 decades, mentored many, and championed for equity and inclusion in healthcare as our former chair of Health and Human Services. In February, we had a few key decisions we made. First was the ULIP application for the 145 project. The community board voted not to approve with conditions. Community Board 10 also passed a resolution condemning federal raids and deportations, while reaffirming our commitment to protect all of our immigrants in our community. We also made some structural changes to our board when it comes to operating, as well as merging the land and housing committees. We also established a new committee for government and oversight. In March, we also implemented some leadership changes as well. And this Saturday, lastly, we have our housing forum, so all is welcome. It is at 200-214 West 135th Street at Thurgood Marshall Academy. During this housing forum, we'll cover such topics as tenant rights, community land trust, as well as navigating housing courts. Any questions?
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for having me.
Appreciate it. Xavier, I will pass it over to you.
Councilmember Brewer is here.
Oh,
Definitely.
great. Well, let's see if they'll be promoted, because I think we were trying to get them on previously. Until the council member joins, if you want to give your report.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. I hope everyone's doing well. Sorry I couldn't be here last month. I was dealing with a personal illness and the illness of my father, who has long COVID and influenza, now RSV. So it's very, very important that these issues do impact our communities. As we've seen, long COVID for many people, it is an inflammatory disease. It does suppress the immune system. So again, it's hitting people generally who are in their late 60s, 70s, and it can be a downward slide. I thank you to Rosa Diaz, our secretary, who came to attend and adding the comments. I was listening in. It was a very robust meeting, so thank you for the inclusion. She really enjoyed it, and appreciate everyone's inclusivity. So CB11's got a lot going on, and to our partners at both 9 and 10 and 7 here with the Discovery Reform, we've been dealing with this issue for over a year. We had a presentation. We've had presentations from Legal Aid as well, and heard both sides, both arguments. The general gist was that, when we heard both sides, there was anecdotal on both. But when it came to stats, where the rubber met the road was that they just don't have the bandwidth and would have to almost bring in another 100 million to hire enough ADAs, so assistant district attorneys, to actually, and support staff. It would take that per annum to actually prosecute all of the crimes happening in the borough of Manhattan. And that's just because of population. That's literally what it is. It's simple math. As my kids say, the math isn't mathing. And this is what we're dealing with as a reality, which is why many of them get referred down to lesser charges, to misdemeanor, because they just can't process it all. It's really like everything gets bottlenecked. Case in point, I'm sure you saw the report from New York Post with the DV case that was dismissed for something that was not pertinent to the case. Several years ago, we had the same thing in East Harlem. We've had multiple cases in East Harlem where they have just been dismissed because of an unrelated missing piece of evidence. Now, we're very supportive of rights. Like, we don't want a Khalid Browder who should not have been on Rikers, and that's why Raise the Age was passed. And we're very troubled, and I've been stop and frisked, and you wouldn't think I would be. But having an uncle who's a retired officer and a former Marine said, "You just be respectful," and I just cracked a joke saying, "No dinner and movie first." And that kind of broke the ice, right? Not everyone can get away with that, like you can with the TSA. So I think that it's a very contentious issue. There's no two ways about it. And I think that when we remove, and what we recommended to a lot of our board members, is try to divorce yourself from the passion, right? And from the socio-emotional. We want to make sure we're protecting everyone in this process and that we're meted out. I think what they presented to the governor's office is more expansive than what they presented to us. And I think, that's given us reason to say, okay, well, we can carve out our own position. One of the things that wasn't included was protecting, the victim's rights, and also to also to witnesses and things like that, because that's been something that's been a general chilling effect. And as someone who had our home in November broken into, it, like literally trying to break into our door of our apartment building because we're on the ground floor, tried twice. And it turned out, as was shared at a previous borough board, that those 13 B&Es and robberies were 7 of them were committed by the same individual who they finally apprehended. And it was a local, but they could only push 2 or 3. So the thing is, had there been a full B&E and I defended at 5 a.m, all of my wife's information, they could have found out about my kids, where they are, because it's easy to trace. And so, it made it very personal. I've asked the board, because I tried to divorce myself even in that experience. Let's just do the math. Let's do the logic. And we did have to Doug over there, floating head. We did have both Andy Wershauer and Legal Aid come, and they had a very civil conversation, which was very important. There had been previous conversations where there were a lot of ad hominem attacks, and we have pushed to the board that that's got to stop. And so both parties were respectful in that process. So I would encourage you and everyone here to do the same. So enough on that. We did have a bodega worker who was assaulted last night. We are chasing that down to find out what happened there. We have had people pushing to do bylaws, and I know a lot of our bylaws changes have been pushed through at various points. There was, a discussion last executive My position is that that should be reserved for a bylaws committee, which we will be forming, versus trying to push through something very rapidly with, when you're doing a comprehensive overhaul. That's very important that, and especially since members a year ago expressed interest and several on executive didn't want to do it. And so now suddenly there's a push to do that, and I've encouraged them. And we're gonna have executive tonight, like this has to be done in a thoughtful, considered approach, because it is a governing document that lives. Exit interviews, I know we've had a lot of turnover. I think we have, 15 spots on CB 11 or something like that. That is a lot. Usually we're at a turnover about 10 to 11. A lot of senior members have left, which is very, it's problematic, but many of them have had health issues. Every time someone resigns, I do an exit interview to really assess. And one of the overall things is that we found, and something we're trying to shift culturally, is that they felt like certain committee chairs were not as inviting and open to opposing or dissenting points of view. And I've impressed on all the committee chairs that you have to divorce yourself again, take off your personal hat, put on your professional hat to take on board. Also the same with the public. We're here to listen to the public. We represent the public. And you may not agree with what the public says. So find a different pathway to listen. So that's something that was generally opined on. With that, we have, survey of housing conditions. We're doing NYCHA tours, the RAD PAC, ANCP, which was applied from HPD to take place to replace TIL. These are things that our housing has taken on. We also, we're looking forward to the new members in May. So we have 3 months left of this term. So very excited for that. And I just want to say thank you to everyone here for all your work and partnership. So that's it.
Thank you so much.
On the bylaws piece, we undertook like a pretty significant front to back analysis of our bylaws that included benchmarking all these various considerations that all of you had in your bylaws. If it's helpful, we can send that across to you.
Please, I mean, we did our last overhaul and it was pretty expansive with Alex Cohen, who's an attorney, and Joe Goldblum, God rest his soul, who was a longtime CD member and worked in, I don't remember which office it was, but elected in Queens. Yeah, so the remit is going to be not a full overhaul, but a bespoke approach, assessing things and saying, listen, because any changes would, everyone who's currently in place, everyone would have to be grandfathered in under the old bylaws when it comes to certain oversight, especially when it comes to attendance and things like that. So,
Sure.
3 things. One, would you mind sharing the recording from the discussion with legal aid and the DA's office? Because our board is heard from the DA's office, we're interested in opining, but looking for not setting up a firestorm of another committee meeting with large fights and arguments and things like that. So being able to share what you have with the statistics and the recording could go a long way for our discussions without having to light people's hair on fire, which I appreciate.
We also had both sides at a meeting. It was again a robust discussion, a lot of confusion, but I think it's helpful because you do hear both sides. They go back and forth.
So, I mean, since y'all have done the work, it just kind of will save us a little bit. We can use them as resources. I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
That certainly did. And anybody who we don't actually get a ton of turnover in CB1. We maybe were an odd board that way. I think we'll have probably by the time I get through doing attendance stuff again, maybe 5 this term, maybe. But I'd love to see the exit interviews. Right, that's one thing. And then that's one, that was 2. And the last thing bylaws. We made bylaw revisions since 2020 when the pandemic started. And it almost seemed like every couple months we had to do them because of the emergency orders and being online. So where we are in the bylaws, we have our 2019 on the website, but we've gone through and taken every bylaw change that was made under open meeting laws and are in the process of updating our bylaws now through a committee. We don't have to bring it back to the board for a vote because they've already done the resolutions for votes for changes. So it's about just trying to clean it up. And I think I've reached out to some, but I've wanted to do a survey to see when, like our strengths, some things that are very different from board to board, like when are your elections? Right? And how do you deal with public members? Those are probably the 2 things that are still very kind of out there. public members serve at the pleasure of the chair, but when do you appoint them? Is there a process? We used the old borough president's application form.
Yeah, one pager.
The many pager, and mocked it up for public members.
Yeah, we have something similar.
Yeah.
So I mean, just like those kind of
Sure.
conversations to share would be resources would be really helpful.
Thank you. Before we keep going, I see.
No, you can keep going. I can listen. I can wait.
I think Valerie had a question, and then we can go to you, council member.
But I can wait. I can wait.
Are you sure, Gail? I'm happy to.
No, I love listening. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning. I forgot. We are actually doing something on the discovery materials next Monday night in our social justice committee meeting. And I had a lot of back and forth because some people only wanted to have one side, but we're having the DA's office and a representative of legal aid. And then we're also having a law professor who's going to come in and actually say what the law is before we start, hopefully, the debate. So again, anybody who wants to listen in, but I'd like to, Xavier, if you can send your YouTube, I'd like to send that to my co-chairs just to help them prepare even more for the event. So anybody who wants to tune in. I just wanted one more thing. We're doing our charter commission is already underway, our charter committee. We're probably going to always advocate, especially for the council member who's that term limits for CB members be eliminated. So that'll be part of probably our review of whatever charter proposals there are. Anyway, thank you. Thanks for letting me speak again.
Valerie, you can watch our YouTube from the as it relates to discovery.
Okay.
Steering committee meeting.
Great. Thanks, guys. Sammy, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see everybody. Thanks for coming down to CB1. Okay, it's no shortage of fun with outdoor dining. So we had over 25 applications this month. And one of the things that we are seeing is restaurants are we get the road bed, and then a week later or 10 days later, we get the sidewalk. So we're not able to actually have a holistic conversation, and we require every applicant to come before us. So then we're asking them to come back. So after going through, we now have 3 committees that hear based on the deadlines that outdoor dining and DOT has. So they all go to licensing, which had a meeting that ended at 10 o'clock this month, which was brutal, because not only did we have a dozen outdoor dining applications to hear, but we also had liquor licenses, which is what they normally do. Then we roll into quality of life for the next set of outdoor dining, and the last sweep before full board comes to exec. But that really has put a huge burden for coordination and trying to adjust at every point. We're still not getting holistic packages that understand 1 roadbed, 2 sidewalk, 3 FDNY waivers, which is a thing when you have historic streets. And we really need to understand, because we have heard from presentations that FDNY has done, DOT is monitoring based on a 15-foot clear path. But once the truck gets to your location, they have to put the legs out, which actually takes up a little bit more room than just driving down the street to stabilize the trucks. So there needs to be some kind of a larger perspective and purview on this topic, especially on any borough, any place that has historic streets. It's just the community board is making decisions and trying to help the restaurant. But if DOT is approved on one side, what's on the other side of the street? Like, who's making those decisions? And FDNY has come out on both sides saying, we don't think that is a good thing, but decisions are happening at the top of the level. So
What do they do when there's parking on both sides? Because the sheds take up the space of a parked, like if a cyber truck is parked, it's the same size as a.
Right.
So they must have had to deal with this in the past.
So they measure the street, a 15-foot clear path, including 2 sets of parking or road bed. But if it's a commercial loading zone on the other side, that's a little, a truck is going to be wider than a car. And that will affect the capacity to go down, but even so, once the truck stops, the fire truck, it needs room to spread its legs out to stabilize. So, I mean, there are.
Understood,
Yeah.
but they would have previously, so it's just that, the sheds are basically the same size as a car, so what's the difference? I guess I'm having a little trouble.
Visibility, access, and a car you can get around, you can lay stuff on top, so we'll see how it works. I'm not gonna. FDNY should fight for themselves, but the thing that we noticed beyond all that, we have many restaurants who've applied, where let's say 60 seats inside and over 100 seats outside between roadbed and sidewalk, which means they no longer qualify with the bathrooms. And there's a total disconnect here. We're fighting for public bathrooms at every point possible. We love the fact that our electeds support the need for public restrooms, but there's a ratio that the Department of Buildings has. It's 1 bathroom per 75 people. So when I have a restaurant that has a bathroom coded based on the size of the restaurant, and they double or triple the size of their seating capacity, there's not enough bathroom capacity. And sidewalk is permanent, roadbed is temporary, I get that, but it is still an effect on the bathrooms, and there's no connection between the two. So we are attempting to work with the restaurateurs to ask them to reduce their seating. Some are very willing to understand that dialogue. Others are like, too bad, so sad, we're allowed to do it. So I think that that's something that, we went through all the resolutions, and I think the benefit of having 25 of them in one block is you actually start to see where the holes are, the bathrooms, not knowing the width of the streets, having grandfathered non-compliant bathrooms, right? So grandfathered in for restaurants, non-compliant ADA bathrooms, but then you are requiring the restaurant to have ADA compliant roadbed and sidewalk. So technically, someone who has accessibility needs can dine in the restaurant but not use the bathrooms.
Which is itself a violation,
Which is
arguably in the ADA.
correct, which again goes back to what we're talking about.
Sure.
And then their DOT did not put into their plan, where does the restaurant get its deliveries? And where do the sanitation things go? Right? Where are the pickups and drop-offs? So there's a lot of things that we see when we are combining it. We've also had a lot of people kick back saying they object to the inclusion of the open grates to be considered as clear path. Because you have a lot of restaurant dining that the graded sidewalk, grated, is the largest part of the sidewalk that's available as clear path. And that's not necessarily shoe friendly unless you're wearing flats or sneakers.
Or if you use a cane.
That's the issue.
That is the issue.
It's not accessible for people who use mobility devices.
Yeah. So we took together a group of these this month to do a resolution to alert our electeds and DOT and DOB of the issues, because obviously the public health crisis is one and the accessibility is another. And these are things that can be worked out as we look ahead, but really needs to have a conversation, and that should be solved in the beginning of the program this year, not in 5 years. It shouldn't have to wait, especially as we're all fighting to get public restrooms everywhere. We did our public comments for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency. There is an awful lot of concern about what will be dumped into the Hudson River Park estuarium and how that works with the combined sewer overflow, and whether or not anybody is as concerned as we are. So the trust itself, the advisory council is trying to get Riverkeeper, trying to get to Fish and Wildlife, which is not necessarily so easy. We had a great walkthrough along 9A with state DOT. So they divided up 9A from 59th Street to the Battery into different sections, and people walked with the DOT representatives, which was an amazing experience. Kind of like the bus tours that you guys were talking about, having real world DOT eyeballs on what the situation is on West Street was amazing. Because there are, where we get told, but you don't have e-bikes that can go that fast. And you're standing there watching an e-bike going 40 miles an hour down the greenway, passing, cars that are traveling on green lights was really illuminating. In fact, the consultant joked around and said, "You paid those people to go by, didn't you? They knew you were here." I'm like, I don't know any of these people. They were going so fast on the greenway that they couldn't take photos. So, I mean, that kind of tells you looking at ways to improve it, which would be really important. I'd like to invite anybody who is in Lower Manhattan to go to 10 South Street, which is the Battery Maritime Building. It's taken us 4 years of arguing with the operator, and they finally came back. We have sent numerous letters to EDC and electeds because in part of their agreement with EDC as a historic asset, they are required to have a public accessible cafe and do tours, and they have a whole list of things that they're supposed to be doing. And when they came to us, we were going through the list and he said, "Where did you get that list?" And I said, "Well, you sent it to me in 22. These are your slides from your presentation." And I think that's a really important conversation because if I didn't have the institutional knowledge, having been on the board and seen that presentation, I wouldn't have known to look for it. And the public would have believed that no, they have no requirement to allow the public in to either use the restroom or buy a cup of coffee. And that is a frightening part of loss of institutional knowledge. So I use that as a win for the public and a concern of how to get that through. So come join me down there for coffee. It's a beautiful building. We've been going over our district needs responses for year 26 in every committee. We'll have that done by the end of the month and send our letters appropriately. It's been really good for the community board to hear and see what the agencies have said, to know what we can push and what we won't be pushing on for this year, which will then help the committee understand, well, we didn't get that in the budget, but we'll keep looking for it the following year. And lastly, 100 gold. I'm really curious hearing all the housing conversations that we're having. We're super frustrated with the process for 100 gold. The city, we would have preferred if they did an RFEI to see if there could have been a community land trust, to see if there could have been city owned and retaining the property, to see how the city could offer affordable housing in a robust way. We know Long Island City and Gansevoort, they're talking about 50% affordable housing, and there are subsidies that the city is looking to do. In this particular place, our objection is the fact that all revenues for the sale of this land will go to buying desks and another office building for the city to re-site their agencies, and $0 will go to affordable housing. So it's kind of, you wonder where the city's priorities are, that they're taking the money from the sale of a building to buy desks for HPD instead of housing for people. There's just a giant disconnect there. For all the conversations that we have, the number one need that we have is affordable housing. And a 485X is an optional program run by the state. It has nothing to do with the city. So we're really unhappy about the process here. And the RFP went out without any changes. The survey was immaterial. Maybe, as an attachment in the back, but there's no teeth in it, no requirements. The survey was short. It was under a month. So they could have done a longer, robust survey to really get community feedback. But the city doesn't really seem to care. We're the ones yelling, we want affordable housing, we want affordable housing. We're not even at a point of talking about high density bulk and housing. We're just at a point of, you're selling city-owned property for the highest bidder to pay for desks. And leaving it up to a developer to decide if they can do affordable housing and how much. That's doesn't help us in Lower Manhattan. I don't know how many times we can say socioeconomically diverse housing. And you've got people on our board who want buildings with 100% affordable housing. I understand that may not be reasonable, but at least come back to us with more than 20 or 25 as an optional program. So that's And lastly, cannabis. For anybody who's still doing cannabis, we did a public comment for their, what was a 1,000-foot rule, which the new comment period is a 500-foot rule. And we would love to have OCM come and talk at a borough board so all the boards could hear what on earth is going on. Because they make an announcement, they put out new rules, and then they told us there's no public comment period yet. That the new rules that they proposed were in response to the last rules they proposed. I don't get it. Right, like, I mean, we're at a point of, we would need something larger.
And so Tammy, there's a new, like, we made comment on the last the last one, but there's a new comment period as well.
Well, they put out new rules, which took it from 1,000 feet to 500 feet.
Because we were against that.
And we were against the 1,000-foot changes as well. There are new rules. I mean, Valerie and I were talking about this. Yeah. So the two things that we would hope that maybe the borough president can help is, one, the outdoor dining holes, especially with his push for public restrooms and understanding to help close those loopholes. And two, on cannabis, to have them come and talk to us about what is going on with that. And then lastly, the controller's office did not find anything wrong with the potential contract that cites a safe haven shelter attached to an elementary school. So we're
Can you
still,
repeat that?
they're opening a safe haven shelter with 100 beds
Attached.
attached
I remember you saying that.
to a pre-K to 5th grade. Attached. The doors are closer than the front door, the desk you passed in this. It's right there.
Just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Okay.
We will be the first. And it is ultimately one of the poorest sightings I've ever seen. Still
Thank
fighting.
you, Tammy.
Valerie.
Valerie, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Oh, I just wanted to speak to Tammy's point about the cannabis. I second that, to have them come in. I mean, this thing that the change of that we sent in comments on a rule and then they completely change up. And then they're like, they don't even ask you for public comment. The way I found out about it, and I think I sent it to Tammy, was there was an article in the New York Post saying that the current cannabis legal store owners were up in arms that they were going to change it from 1,000 to 500. And we haven't been able to get any clarity on where the rule is. And we approved shops based on the fact that there would be at least 1,000 feet of space. And, no one is even saying how, the shops we approved, whether if there is a change in the rule, whether that would even be retroactive to what we did, because it renders a lot of a lot of people approved 2 shops thinking, okay, well, they'll only put 1 and we won't have to do that. And we don't even know what's happening. So I just second that motion that we need somebody to come in and tell us what's going on there.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. Doug, I'll pass it to you quickly and then we'll
Yeah,
continue.
quickly. No, I just wanted to third that request. All the same concerns when we've approved or advised that we approved licenses in our neighborhood that were, within 1,000 feet or outside of 1,000 feet. And yes, the licensees, I think, should have some protection or some ability to object if they had proximity protection and suddenly the proximity protection is 50% of what it was. And I just, if I understand correctly, these are proposed changes. They are not in effect yet. Is that right?
Yep.
Right. I think they should come and present because I think there'll be a lot of public comment about it.
Thank you, Doug.
And I would just say, we just had one that they notified us that it was 956 feet, so it was denied. So they actually are following the 1,000-foot rule, at least as of last month.
Thanks, Ann.
New month, new rules.
Yeah.
Susan, I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, since Tammy was discussing frustration regarding housing, I will mention Gansford Square. We had finally the RFP for that project came out. Actually, this would have been part of last month's report. But I want to just focus on just how quickly and this process has gone through and has sort of been steamrolled through. This is city property, but only 10% is being allocated for housing of any kind. Half at most of that housing will be affordable, and it's not even clear to whom it will actually be affordable. Most of that land is actually going to the Whitney Museum. And it's not clear how this whole process got started, that there wasn't any public process in this. There's also no coordination, it seems. We're told that there's a portion of the site that is state property that's going to be transferred over to the city, but we found that process hasn't actually begun. And there seems to be no coordination between city and state when it comes to this. Our people have been sort of generating ideas about how some of the streets that existed because there was once a meat market are no longer necessary, and it might be beneficial to demap them and turn them into sites for housing. But there's no discussion of that, and we've been locked out of the process and are told that you can't reconsider the site. This was particularly also brought home we also participated in the Route 9A walkthrough, which our people found very enlightening. But it raises, the question is that we're dealing not just with city property, but adjacent state property. And there needs to be this more holistic approach to this to really get the best results. I mean, people can't keep crying that there's a housing crisis, and then when presented with locations for housing, doing something else with the land. The Gansford we wasn't even made aware. We weren't even made aware of this until 4 months ago. The first public presentation was in December, and the RFP went out the end of January. So it's like, how do you participate in a process like that? Let's see. The upheaval in Washington has certainly trickled down to us. Two of our committees had some interesting conversations. Our schools in ed hosted Superintendent McGuire from DOE about the impact of immigration enforcement. And discussing the January 13th directive allowing ICE and other non-local law enforcement access to our schools. The committee generated a reso asking to rescind that directive and basically pointing out how disruptive and dangerous it is to the educational process. And basically an environment of safety that our schools are supposed to maintain. Our Human Services Committee also is dealing with, from a different perspective, is address the question of the elimination of all references to transgender persons on the National Park Service website. We are the home of the Stonewall Monument, and the birthplace of the LGBT modern movement, and it's their reso basically is saying we're distorting history and we're attempting to erase the very people whom the monument is supposed to honor and acknowledge. So, this stuff really does hit on the most local level. We had a very positive meeting hosted by our Parks Committee on the future of youth sports at Pier 40. There's an organization, Pier Park and Playground Association, is a nonprofit that's been running summer programs and a baseball and softball program, affordable for many years. In fact, it predates Hudson River Park. There was some dispute over continuing with this organization, but we had a very large community turnout, supporting the organization, hoping for sort of a wake-up call so that they keep their safety standards intact. And it's very positive to see when community engages with our institutions and resolves this to ensure no disruption in the availability of accessible and affordable athletic services to all of our young people. And let's see, my last item, outdoor dining. This was a lighter month. We only had one meeting of our working group with 32 items on the agenda. Only six being referred to the FDNY. We're noticing that we had 5 of them not being ADA compliant. This is an issue. We have applicants that are sometimes not taking that requirement into account. We were promised that by DOT that they were going to moderate the rate at which we receive applications. As compared to last month, when our working group had 3 meetings, the first one had 40 items on the agenda, the second 41, and the third 28. Total of those, 46 of those were referred to the FDNY. So we have a lot of issues with, access for emergency vehicles in half of our district is historic, designated in one way or another. We're also expecting that because there's been no holistic approach to this application and permit process, is that now our SLA committees are going to be expecting an influx of additional applications to deal with the liquor licensing of that. So that, my last item is, this is my last meeting. My term ends at the end of this month. Our first vice chair, Valerie De La Rosa, who was running unopposed, will be elected today. And she's wonderful. And she has sat in for me once. So I'm sure everything will go well. And thank you so much. It has been a real pleasure and an honor to attend these meetings. They've taught me a lot. So I'll be seeing, I'm not leaving the board, so I will be seeing all of you.
Appreciate you being here all these times and
I come for the bagels and coffee.
Andrea.
Thank you. I just want to make sure did we want to turn the floor? Okay,
And then
got it. Okay, sure. I'll make it quick. Hard act to follow, and we'll miss you, Susan. I'll keep it short. I missed you all last month. Sorry about that. But I was glad to see my co-chairs from the downtown at the conflict of interest training. We had a really well-attended meeting, around 75 people on Zoom, with the illustrious Alex Kapp, who's an excellent resource for our boards and always makes it fun. I think it was a really informative meeting for everyone who attended. Similar to many of you all, we are also very attentive to the directives regarding ICE, and our board has been mobilizing, particularly with the Community Education Council, and we've sponsored a Know Your Rights training, and have been mobilizing our members to meet this moment and make sure that everybody has the resources that they need and are taking a pretty proactive role here. We also are similarly overwhelmed by SLA applications, perhaps uniquely so. Our office is pretty bogged down with outdoor dining applications and SLA applications on a month. The past few months, we've been reviewing over 60 applications, which, as you can imagine, takes an enormous amount of effort from our office, and also the meetings are about 6 hours long every time. So, we're thinking about how to streamline these things, but haven't quite figured that out yet. So any kind of advice or strategies we're welcome, but otherwise we're doing this work, even though we've cut through as much of the red tape as we can, try to do as much administrative
approvals where we can. It's still pretty unwieldy and it takes up a lot of time that we would otherwise be working on numerous other issues. We had some staffing turnover last year, and that means that we had some extra funds that we want to use. So we are determined that we want to potentially commission a couple of studies, one of which would be a affordability sort of survey. We talk about that a lot in our district needs and our budget priorities, but we want to get a more accurate count of what are the affordability bands we need in our community board district. And we hired a demographer to take a look at the 2020 census data. So perhaps we'll have them collaborate with that demographer. And we also want to do a sort of land use survey of that relates to the City of Yes economic opportunity, to take a look at how small businesses and entrepreneurs can take advantage of those zoning changes. I think it was passed, but we're sort of in this phase where people aren't really aware of it, or if there's opportunities that they can actually take advantage of. So we hope to have that complete in the next few months. And similar to a number of you all, we're proactively planning leadership transitions on our longtime chairs who are going to be sunsetting in the next couple of years. Any support from any of you all or collaboration over the next few months is welcome. And that's about it for now. I'll pass it over to them.
Yeah, well, I was gonna
Yeah.
add, we just had at Borough Service Cabinet, the past one, we had Jolie from the US Census give a
great.
presentation. So I know that she's connected with Susan
Great.
to help out on any of that. And I know she's also connected with Mark Dillard. So any of the survey needs that you have, if you need additional push with
Okay.
the census folks, we're happy to do that. And then also some of the district managers, I think I would have Susan get in contact with like Max at CB7.
Yeah.
We were talking about like their application process and how it's helping them streamline that like SLA and sidewalk
Okay.
components. So,
Max.
yeah, Max from CB7,
Oh,
he's the
okay,
district
got it.
manager there.
Oh, got it.
So,
Okay. That's helpful.
Great. I will, I see a note from Doug. Doug, did you want to unmute real quick?
Yeah, this is not in my district, but I just wanted to remind everybody about the anniversary of the tragic Triangle Shirtwaist fire, which was absolutely awful, but resulted in some very positive changes in fire safety and factory safety. And that's again not my district, but it's the anniversary, I believe, is March 25th. And I just wanted to note it. Thanks.
There isn't always a memorial program that is, open to the public at the site.
Great, thank you. I think that's all of our chair reports. So Councilmember Brewer, I'm happy to pass it to you now. Oh, sorry, just gotta unmute.
What a great meeting. Congratulations. A couple of things. First of all, on this commission, there are two, I guess you call them competing charter commissions. I don't know what's going to end up on the ballot, but the mayor's one, which is mostly focused a lot on housing, just so you know, that meeting in Manhattan, you should look it up to get all the boroughs, but it's April 9th, and that's going to be on housing and land use at New York Law School. The reason I mention it is, I don't know that this is true, but there's a rumor that it could include getting rid of lots of the EULA process. So be aware, and I'd love to see testimony. Then the speaker has a New York City Commission to strengthen local democracy. I testified at the most recent at Borough of Manhattan Community College. That was on March 10th, mostly about governance and the work that I know in terms of integrity and et cetera. But there's another Tuesday, May 20th at John Jay College. So I just bring these to your attention because I always get nervous about what charter commissions do, because they can do anything they want. And I don't know, like I said, what's going to end up on the ballot. Number two, just in terms of budget, I think because you're all involved with participatory budgeting. That's happening very soon, I think starting March 29th. For a week. We have lots of items. I think most of the Manhattan, I don't know, all of the Manhattan council members participate. We're doing the city council budget right now, initiatives, delegations, individual. also checking always with what the boards have suggested, but just so you know, that's happening right now. In some cases, we get to suggest for commissions, committees that we're on, or sometimes we get to suggest in terms of Women's Caucus, Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus, where you get a couple of items. So if there's something really strong that you as a board feel about, that you want funded through your council member, make sure they know about it. I also just want to mention the, obviously, you know that the scaffolding legislation that everybody has worked on, including you, is taking place. 5 bills, I think, on March 26th. The other thing that's happening is April 1st, as you probably know, is the deadline for composting in buildings. And I know that a lot of large buildings are not composting. So we have a bill that's pending that, believe it or not, there's no way to complain about it to 311. So we hope that the bill will pass to say composting is an item for 311. We also passed a bill, because I'm a real nut on archives, to make sure that social media is also part of archives. A lot of people don't care about archives, but I'm a real believer in it. I want to thank Doug for his excellent ABC analysis. I really appreciate the support of Community Board 7 and the input from Community Board 7. I've done 200, maybe 250 ULIPs in my life, but I've never done a place that has 0 underlying zoning. So it makes it really, really hard. So I appreciate all the work that Doug and others have put into it. Just going back to legislation for a minute on e-bikes, my favorite topic. I know that before she left, Mira Josie, for whom I have great respect and will miss desperately, sent to the city council, and they're working on it, some e-bike legislation, which I think would help a little bit. It would mandate, and I don't have it in front of me, but much more input from the apps. And without getting into all the specifics, there's about 4 or 5 pieces that go into this. And I hope that I know that the speaker's legislative staff is working on it, but we need a lot more help on that topic. I heard Tammy talk earlier about 40 miles an hour. I see it all the time. I'm still working on that West Park Presbyterian Church and trying to keep it standing. Amazing cultural activities. Maybe you saw, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 major celebrities who live on the west side. Mark Ruffino being the leader of them all. He's amazing. Have put their names and their money behind making sure that there is a standing church and cultural center. Talk about the fight of my life, because the Presbytery wants to tear it down and make just a few condos, 0 affordable housing. So anyway, that's just so you know, I'm not giving up. The other topic is, I never saw anything like the cost of renovating a bathroom in a park. They go from 5.2 million to $13 million to renovate a park bathroom. So I'm gonna actually ask the governor for money, because I don't know where to get this kind of money. But I would love to know some others, if you've had some of those same experiences. We need bathrooms. And, we talk about the ones on the street which don't seem to move, but for God's sake, we need them. So I'm just bringing up a topic that we need to have more input. We had a wonderful rally for Ukraine. We have a lot of Russian and Ukrainian families in the neighborhood. And there's a Ukrainian church. I know that the center of much of this activity is on the Lower East Side, but we happen to have a very old, very well-known Ukrainian church. So hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families showed up. It was very, very special. And we also had a wonderful town hall meeting with city agencies, and my friend Wynton Marcellus was the keynote. The reason I mention it is tons of young people came. I was so happy. 600 people, 700 people, something like that. And the reason I mention it is I teach at Hunter College, and some of my students came. I didn't ask them, but they showed up. And what they noticed was fascinating. They said, I did not know how impressive city employees are. So we had, we had DOT there, we had police there, we had, I don't know, 10 to 12 agencies, all of whom you probably know, not the commissioners, the deputy commissioners, the head of Intergov at sanitation, et cetera. And they were all fabulous. Obviously, Tricia was great from Parks. And what it was really invigorating for me, because I do believe in public servants, particularly at that level. So I just want you to know, It was also a reflection of you. Obviously, Doug Kleiman was there, equally fabulous. And Community Board 4 was represented by Dolores Rubin. So congratulations to our colleagues in government. Just quickly, we're doing tree care clinics. We have had 2 so far, 3 more to go. I cannot believe how many people show up to take care of their street trees. And I suggest it as a topic that people are interested in. We do housing clinics. We have an open house on April 3rd at the district office. We have an animal care center adoption event. We have recycling day. And then we have a bike helmet and bike bonanza, bike giveaway day. You can bring in your old bike and get a new bike. Anyway, those are some of the topics. I will say that picking up on your themes, we're very nervous. 10% of the city budget is federal. At DOE, Department of Education, it is all of the disabled. IEP is federal and all of Title I is federal. So there's a lot of concern on all of these levels. And I think that's really going to be my priority if you talk about the federal government is not losing that money. Thank you so much and congratulations on a great meeting.
One question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I think you have a question.
Councilmember Borough, always a pleasure to see you. Xavier here.
Thank you.
When is the commission, the charter commission going to start taking on feedback? When? 'Cause we're-
Both of them already have, believe it or not. So there's 2 of them. The mayor's one has already started. You can find it by just going to the word City Charter Commission. And it will pop up. But the next one for Manhattan is April 9th. And that's
Okay,
going to be at New York Law School. And then,
time for submission of positions?
yep, I think you can basically talk about anything you want. They are focusing on housing at that particular one, but other topics are on government reform. Those seem to be the 2 things they're focusing on.
Okay, but is there a deadline for submission of recommendations?
I believe sometime in January, but you have to check with them.
Okay, thank you.
But don't forget, there's also one that the speaker has too.
Thank you so much, Councilmember, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm literally texting with Trisha right now, I pass on your compliments. All right, everyone, I think with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you so much, Susan. Again, we're gonna miss you. Looking
Yes.
forward to having Valerie on board,
I'll
but
have to be online. I'll enjoy being online.
There you go.
Folks from home.
take care of you.
Bye, Susan. See you soon.